You may have seen that ice hockey player has now been charged with manslaughter. Now, I'm not going to talk about that case at all because you've seen my previous videos on contempt of court, and now there are active proceedings. So this is not a commentary whatsoever about that particular case. But people just were asking about, what's manslaughter, why isn't it murder? So I just thought, to give a brief overview of those offences, and then you can just, apply this generally. Basically, we've discussed before that all crimes have two elements. The mens rea, what were you thinking, what was your state of mind at the time, and the actus reus, what did you actually do? Well, the actus reus, in a case like this, or any other case where somebody dies, is that you inflicted some sort of injury that had those consequences. However, depending on your state of mind, that could be any number of offences or not an offence at all. If you accidentally cause an injury to somebody, then you don't commit a criminal offence whatsoever. There might be civil liability. But let's say, for instance, what's the mens rea for murder? The mens rea for murder is, at the time you inflicted the injury, you intended to cause either serious harm or death. And what do we mean by intention? Intention is you voluntarily did something that would have those consequences. So if you just push somebody and they fall over and fracture their skull, you probably didn't intend to fracture their skull, but you did intend to assault them because you were pushing them. And that can amount to manslaughter. Because the mens rea for manslaughter, there's various types of manslaughter. But in this particular instance, it would be that you inflicted an injury. And at the time you did so, you were reckless as to whether you would actually cause that injury. Okay? So it's not that it was accidental, that you didn't know there was a risk of causing the injury. It's that you knew or should have known there was a risk, but you took that risk, and as a result, a fatal injury occurred. So that passes the test for manslaughter. So intention is always the hardest thing to prove. Obviously, if somebody yells something like, I'm going to murder you, or I'm going to do this, or somebody does something clearly, like uses a weapon, then obviously people can infer that you intended to commit serious harm. But intention's not the same as sort of wants. You can intend something even if it's the last thing you actually wanted to do. But also, you can be deemed to have intended something if it's the logical and foreseeable consequence of your voluntary actions. So to give an example from a real case, if you throw a block of concrete off of a motorway bridge onto a car, it doesn't matter that actually all you wanted to do was scare somebody. If that actually hits somebody and kills them, as happened in that particular case, then the jury is entitled to say, well, no, it doesn't matter what you wanted to happen. It's obvious that if you do something like that, then you will cause death or serious injury. That did go to appeal because there was the argument that, well, no, they didn't intend to do it. They were just reckless as to whether it would happen or not. But to avoid people basically getting off of offences or the more serious offence just because they're naive or stupid or they didn't think things through, we actually apply that. So we apply an objective test and say, well, a reasonable sort of member of society would sort of like look at that and go, well, yeah, that was fairly obvious what might have happened there. So you meet the requisite intent. So I just thought that might be vaguely useful and helpful. And like I say, I'm not commenting on that particular case. This is applicable generally, and it crops up all the time. So anyway, if you did find that vaguely useful, vaguely interesting, please consider, as always, clicking the like button, subscribing and sharing. Like I say, you don't have to, although apparently I've found out that if I get above 10,000 subscribers, YouTube works a bit more efficiently in terms of uploads and codexes and other things I don't understand. So yeah, feel free to click. But like I say, no obligation to if you don't want to. Or if you have clicked and you didn't like this, unlike now.